Hi guys, and welcome to Toys of Mass Destruction. Today we're going to be talking about Angron, but before we get into that, if you could just chuck us a like, a subscribe, it really helps us out. Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
Yeah, introducing Liam, who you've met from previous ones, our
Hey,
World
guys.
Eaters player and big Angron fan.
Oh, yes.
I'm a little bit lacking in Angron knowledge, but you can bring me up to speed on that today. Tell me about Angron. What's different about Angron?
Yeah, I mean, so the main thing we've noticed because now he's the third Chaos Primarch that we've had. So he's not like something that's totally new to us. We've had Mortarion, we've had Magnus before. And the general consensus that I've been with these guys is that overall they're fun, but they're not the best. Like, there's a lot of matchups where they'll kind of just do nothing. They'll just get shot off the board turn one, and overall they don't really do much.
Yeah, big scary thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same plenty of Lord of Wars. They just die pretty easily. But I'm very happy to say that, in my personal opinion, I think Angron kind of breaks the mold here. I think this is a Supreme Commander Lord of War type model that you're actually going to see a lot on the tabletop. I know. It's great stuff. Like, people want to see a model like this. He's a gorgeous model. Such great detail on him. It's exactly what I wanted from an Angron miniature. The second he was revealed,
he is gorgeous.
I was so excited, and I've played one game with him now, and I've already got lists planned out. I'm planning to use him a hell of a lot more because I actually really, really rate him, and I'm really excited to see how he performs.
Well, yeah, that's good. We'll come to your list later though.
Yeah.
So what's his stats? Let's have a run over his data sheet and tell me what he does.
Yeah, so his core stat line is what you would expect from a kind of Demon Primarch, with some slight things that do tip it more into his favor. So we'll work our way along, and the first thing to note is he has a movement stat of 16 inches. 16.
That's pretty
It's
amazing.
mad. It's mad.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's the same as Magnus, and he's faster than Mortarion, which, when you've got a Primarch that's all about combat, that's exactly what you want. Like, you need him to be that fast. He has weapon skill and ballistic skill of 2-up, and it never degrades. Perfect. It shouldn't degrade
You're not going to get any better than that, are you?
Exactly.
So,
yeah. He has a base strength stat of 9 as well, which is pretty chunky. You'd expect that from the Primarch of the World.
Yeah, you would.
Yeah, and this is the part that I think a lot of people were surprised by. He is only toughness 7. When you compare it to the Bloodthirster, who was toughness 8 when the new Chaos Demon Codex came out, people were a little bit surprised that he was toughness 7. But I think this is fine. Like, he didn't really need to be toughness 8, as we'll delve into his rules a bit more.
I'm sure there's a reason he's not T8.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. He does have 18 wounds, so no obscuring, same as all the other Primarchs.
Yeah.
So if the enemy can see him, he will be shot at. But
which is always a problem for these big
it is always
boys,
a problem, but we're going to come to why it's not the biggest of issues with him. And then his most outrageous stat, starting at top bracket, he has 12 attacks base. 12. Who thought of this? Like, it was like, oh, you know what? Like, Tyranid monsters have like 10 attacks each, so
Yeah, well, that's the way the edition's going, right? I mean, you've got to go dial it up to 11, and where do you go from there?
Oh, dial up
you
to 12.
Go to 12. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and he does degrade. Obviously, his movement and his attacks degrade, and that's it. Like, his weapon skill stays the same, his strength stays the same. And the last part about his stat line, which, again, people see, and I think it's quite underrated, is the fact he has an armor save of 2-up, which most of the time, people are going to be shooting anti-tank at him, so it's not going to make much of a difference. But there are times where the enemy's just down to the infantry fire. Angron's on 1 wound left.
And you're just trying to pick off that last wound, and it just won't come off.
Yeah. And when let's say it's AP1, when he's getting a 3-up save, when other Demon Primarchs would be getting a 4-up, it makes all the difference.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, exactly.
And points wise, how does he tally up against the others?
He's very fairly pointed. I will say that. He's the cheapest of the Demon Primarchs by quite a considerable amount.
Okay.
Yeah, he's 360 points. which off the top of my head,
Not
I
bad.
know both Magnus and Mortaris are at least 400, and I think they're more than that.
Yep.
But yeah, he's very fairly costed. It is kind of reflected in the fact that he has less abilities than the other Demon Primarchs.
Yeah, it's still a reasonable amount of points that it's not totally overwhelming your list.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, at that level.
He fits in pretty well. Like, you're going to be happy taking him at 360. He's not.
Yeah,
You're not
yeah.
going to debate. Oh, I don't know. He's a bit too much now. I think he's at a good spot where you're going to see him being taken.
Yeah.
And that's not even to talk about his abilities. Like, you know, he doesn't have as many, but he does have them. Right? So
well, that leads us neatly into let's run through his abilities. Shall we start with Warlord traits?
Yes. So this is the main part where I talk about where he has less abilities than the other Demon Primarchs. So he only has one Warlord trait, whereas the others have 3 each. And his Warlord trait is probably, in my opinion, the weakest of his abilities.
Why does he only have one? Is that a World Eaters thing, or
yeah? I mean,
is it unique to him, or
yeah, he has. Because obviously we've seen recently where the big name characters get more than one Warlord trait with Abaddon.
Yeah, exactly.
And I guess it kind of makes sense that Angron only has one Warlord trait, because at the end of the day, he was a great fighter, he was excellent combatant, but he wasn't really a leader for the World Eaters. Like, he kind of hated his own guys, so he didn't really feel... It took him a while before he kind of didn't so much like them, he just kind of tolerated them, in a sense. But so that is reflected in his Warlord trait, and he is much less about buffing his own army than he is just about absolute slaughter.
Which fits with, what you've just been saying.
So the one Warlord trait he does have is called the Red Angel, which is whilst an enemy unit that has the objective secured ability is within 6 inches of Angron, they lose it. So
always good.
It's always good.
As an Orc player with lots of boys, I would absolutely hate that.
It's really nice. I do think it's the weakest of his abilities, because at the end of the day, he is only one model, and he does only count as one model for the purposes of objectives.
Mm-hmm.
Where it does shine is in specific missions, such as Data Scry Salvage is a really good example of it, because it's sticky objectives when the enemy, any unit has objective secured.
Yeah.
So if you can fly up next to them, remove their objective secured, sure, they probably still have the objective, but they haven't stickied it.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty big deal. Like, it can be the difference between 12 and 8 on the primary.
Yeah. And these are the margins that make the difference.
Yeah. Exactly.
So normally you would be running a Lord Invocatus.
Yes. So
what's the trade-off? What's the difference between these two guys?
So yeah, I've used Lord Invocatus quite a lot. I've taken him to a few tournaments now, and I have had really good success with him. And I'm by no means saying he's bad. Like, he's incredible. Like, because
I know he was doing really well for you, and that's fine.
Exactly.
I mean, obviously Angron's incredibly fun, and why wouldn't he? But I just, he still seems like he's fairly competitive as well. So what's the
absolutely? Yeah. So
what are you losing? What are you gaining?
Yeah, the main reason with taking Angron is the fact that he's a Demon Primarch, he has a similar rule to all the others where he has to be the Warlord. And World Eaters is the first book, I think maybe other than Chaos Demons, that has introduced the fact that you can only have one Warlord trait, and it's going to be on your Warlord. There's no stratagem to have any extra bonus Warlord traits or relics or anything like that. What you pick is what you get. That's it. You can't buy anymore. And it's also unique in the sense that this book has unique Warlord traits for the named characters. Like, normally, I'm just thinking off the top of my head here, like Marnius Calgar, his Warlord trait is an Ultramarines one, but you can still give that Warlord trait to any other Ultramarines character.
Yeah.
But with this, Angron is the only one who can have that Red Angel Warlord trait. Like, you can't give it to some other HQ for the World Eaters. And Lord Invocatus' Warlord trait is the reason why you see him so much. It allows himself and 2 other core units that start the game near him to make a normal move at the start of the first battle round, but before the first turn begins.
Okay.
And it's pretty obvious how good that is. Like, when you're playing a melee faction, getting any extra movement speed is a big plus.
Yeah, any kind of big move like that, get you straight up the board. Yeah.
Especially if you go first and then you effectively get a double move. and it's massive. Like it means the difference between first turn charges and having to wait until turn 2.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, which is
And
huge.
yeah, and it's why a lot of people were in debate about taking Angron, because they're like, wow, Angron's so cool and everything, but if I take him, you can't take
But you lose
Invocatus.
that. Yeah, and you lose that pre-game move.
Exactly, which is a big deal. I'm not going to lie. Like, the ability to pre-game move 2 units and Invocatus himself is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about why I think we shouldn't rule Angron totally out, and why I actually think he might be better, in my opinion.
Ooh,
I think
controversial.
I know, like, it's a hot take, but I know a couple of us at TOMD, we were in discussion about it. It was like, oh, I'm thinking up lists, and I'm like, oh, I want to try out Angron, but I don't know, like, Invocatus is so good. And then I'm using Invocatus in the games, and there have been some games where I'm just thinking, yeah, I really like Angron. Like, Angron would be really good right now.
Yeah.
And it's why I want to try him out. It's why I've got these new lists prepared, and I'm really excited to see him. I think he's going to be great. And yeah.
Well, I know you've tried him out with some of the TOMD guys, and
Yes.
I already actually know how that went. But what does he bring?
So he provides so much more than just his data sheet would give out. So it's worth talking about just a couple more abilities he has, like, which show what he can bring to the table. So he has a Chapter Master ability, which, off the top of my head, is the only source of full rerolls in the Codex. Like, rerolls to hit, that is.
Yeah.
Which it is obviously it's fantastic. Like, you
always
can stick it on
strong.
8 bound, you can stick it on Berserkers. When you combine it with Blood Tithe rewards like exploding 6s, it can get really, really strong. And it's just something nice to always have. You know, like, you're never going to say no to Chapter Master rerolls.
No, of course. No, exactly. Yeah, it's good.
Especially since there's actually not many rerolls in the book. The only other way to reroll hit rolls of 1 is with the Demon Prince.
Yeah.
And outside of that, the Demon Prince isn't that great, in my opinion. He's just kind of there to give reroll ones to hit. He's pretty good in combat, but really you want, like, Lords on Juggernauts for the bonus movement.
Yeah.
So Chapter Master rerolls is, can't say no to it. He also has 4-up Invuln save, like you'd expect from any other Demon Primarch. Makes him a bit tougher, so he can at least sit in the middle of the board and just absorb some anti-tank shots if he gets quite lucky.
Yeah, you certainly wouldn't expect anything less than a 4-up on someone like that.
Yeah. And then we get to his Raffle Presence, which is a little bit different, and they've kind of continued this trend with Vashtor, in the sense that he gets an aura ability, but he has to select from 3 in every command phase, and he picks which one, and it's active until the next command phase.
Okay.
So the 3 you can pick from are a 6-inch aura of all core units get +1 attack. Obviously, more attacks is never a bad thing.
Yeah.
But I
probably
think,
not something you're lacking in anyway. So
exactly, like 8 bound have 7 attacks each in combat, and
there's not a lot 8 bound aren't going to kill as it is.
I think this is the one you'll probably see the least. Like, it's nice, but I don't really think the army needs it.
Yeah.
As you said, you've already got so many attacks that it's not really needed. The next one you can pick is a 6-inch aura of reroll hit rolls of 1 in combat. And this is important to note that it's not core. It's just all World Eaters units, reroll hit rolls of 1.
So again, very useful.
Yeah, this is where it gets really useful, in where it allows your Exalted 8 bound to reroll ones to hit. And they're already hitting on 2s, but just guaranteeing those hits is really, really important.
Gives you that consistency. Yeah.
Exactly. Also works on Angron himself. So if you don't want to Chapter Master himself, you can give it to some 8 bound for the full rerolls to hit, and then he's giving himself reroll ones to hit, so he's pretty much hitting all of his attacks. But then we hit onto the real meat, the real strong ability, in my opinion, which is a 6-inch aura of, while an enemy, well, in fact, not even an enemy unit, while any unit is within 6 inches of Angron, can't fall back. Just can't.
Okay. And that's huge.
No limitation on it. It's just you can't fall back.
No rolling 4-ups. You just can't.
Nope. What's that? You're within an inch of me, or sucks to be you. That's where you are.
Yeah.
You're staying there. You ain't moving.
Yeah, that's really big.
It's massive. Like, the amount of times where this will mean Angron charges into something, probably a blitz racer, even if it's just like 10 crew that have pre-game moved, or 10 whatever chaff infantry you want to talk about that you don't really want Angron to be killing. But if it means that after he kills them, he gets that little 3-inch move with his consolidate, and he just touches like
Yeah.
a marine unit or something,
Yeah.
and that's it. Angron's not going to be shot at for a whole other term.
Yeah. Yeah,
And,
really big.
Yeah, and when you're playing against Tau, being the best example, that can swing the game. Like, if turn 2 you get a charge off, you're in combat, and then the Tau player realizes, wait, what do you mean my strike squad can't fall back? What do you mean?
Yeah, of course.
My army's damage output can do absolutely nothing.
And it's not only Angron. You can be obviously piling into something that's in combat with another unit.
Exactly.
That again, so then now you're protecting Angron and your 8-pound and whatever else from that shooting.
It's a very good point you make, because as well, people overlook this as being, if you're just in combat with Angron, you can't fall back from him. It's like, no, it's a 6-inch aura of no fallback.
Yeah.
So even if there's an enemy unit that's not even in combat with Angron, but it is in combat with Berserkers.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I was even thinking about piling in. You don't even need to pile in. They just need to be close enough. Yeah. Yeah.
You would want Angron to be in combat, so it's protected from shooting. But it's not just himself he's protecting. He has the potential to protect so much more.
Quite an area of
Exactly.
That's really, really useful and gives you a lot of control.
Yeah, exactly, and definitely something that is going to catch a lot of people out.
Definitely. Yeah.
So that's just his core rules. That's just the abilities that come on the data sheet. And when you start to include other things that really synergize well with him, that's where you start to think, okay, this guy's really good. Like, he's really strong.
Such as?
So, I mean, we'll start off with by far the most powerful thing. Pretty much everyone knows about it, but just in case you haven't heard about it, there's a blood tithe reward. It's the most expensive one. Costs 6 blood tithes, so a fair few things have to die before you can purchase it. And the downside
in my experience, that's not a problem.
Yeah, exactly. So the downside of this upgrade is you can only purchase it when Angron has died. So you have to lose Angron. Which is sad. But there's a good side. The good side is Angron ain't dead anymore. So you essentially take a destroyed Angron model in your army, put back 8 wounds on him, and he deep strikes in next turn. It specifically states he no longer counts as being destroyed. And
but you're not getting your points for your assassinates or whatever you
assassinates, grind them down. All things like that. He denies the points for that really well. And the best part about it, not limited to once per game. Yeah, you got the blood tithe. You get spending. You keep bringing it back.
Oh my god, that is I knew about the ability. I didn't. I thought it was a one-time. I mean, admittedly, I assumed it would be a one-time use, but the fact you can just keep doing it is insane.
You would think it would be once per game, but they even thought about it. Like, it specifically states this is the only one you can purchase more than once per battle. So,
wow.
Rules as intended, baby.
That's enormous, but it does cost you your blood tithe.
Oh no! Woe is me.
Yeah, exactly.
The thing that I'm going to be spending anyway. But it's a good point you raise, because you do have to spend blood tithe on it, which obviously blood tithe is a powerful resource, and you do want to be using it on those other buffs to really increase your damage output across the army.
Yeah, which then obviously naturally will limit your ability to just keep bringing them back every turn or whatever. But I suppose you can do that. You just won't be able to do anything else. So,
and this is exactly the point, in that a lot of people, like I myself, when it comes to blood tithe, I always make sure I buy the +1 to charge first of all, because that's the most important one in my opinion. And then there's +1 to hit. There's exploding 6s. There's lots that increase your damage output, which most of the time world eaters really want. They want to maximize their efficiency to guarantee that whatever they charge, they're killing, because it's how the army functions. You need to kill whatever you're charging. If you don't kill what you're charging, what are you doing? You've lost.
Yeah.
But a lot of people overlook, and myself, I overlooked this at the beginning, and then after I used Angron for the first time, I started to realize when you've got all these blood tithe abilities that increase your damage output, giving yourself +1 to hit, the exploding 6s, you look at Angron's data sheet and how much damage he does, you don't really need it. When he's kicking out 12 attacks at strength 15, -4, D3 +3 damage, or 39
Yeah.
attacks at a sweep if you want to.
Oh,
Like, who
Yeah.
needs +1 to hit? Who needs exploding sixes? It's gonna
yeah, you're going to do it anyway.
gonna
And you're
increase-
hitting on twos. You're hitting on twos, re-rolling ones anyway. So yeah.
And then if you've got Angron and you think, oh, I've got 6 blood ties, so I've got 2 choices. I can either give everything else in my army exploding sixes, which is great, you know, it's nice, or you can take how much damage Angron has done so far and do it all over again.
Yeah.
And I think I know which one I would pick.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah. Do the math.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so strong that it will catch so many people out. Just the fact that he deep strikes back in.
Yeah.
So I had this exact thing. I played against James. He was playing Votam, and this was the first time that I probably got to try Angron out. Angron died because, you know, it's Votan. They get a couple of judgment tokens on, and that's it. He's dead. Like instantly.
Yeah.
And I also had a Dreadclaw drop pod because I feel like it's a really useful unit just to get some turn 1 presence when you don't have Lord Invocatus.
Yeah.
And so James kind of thought in his head, I brought down my drill, and he thought, hey, sorry, not my drill, my Dreadclaw drop pod. And James thought, hey, Liam's got nothing left in reserve. I can move all my stuff up now. So
yes.
moved his units up, meant he could maximize the efficiency of his army, get as many shots out as he could, and then he killed Angron, which was as expected, but he had left this massive gap behind him.
Big Angron-sized space.
Big
His back line.
Angron-sized
Oh
space.
dear.
And Angron
That
made
will
the
catch
charge.
people out.
He
That will
made
catch
the
a lot of people
charge,
out.
and it was UKTC terrain, and it meant that he made the charge, got onto James's home objective, and was nestled perfectly in his own big L.
Yeah.
Which meant he wasn't being shot at again because nothing could see him, and he had managed to tag multiple things, so then stuff's not falling back, and he's just going to be an absolute nuisance. And it's so strong because it's going to catch so many people out.
Yeah,
Like,
definitely.
it's just
It's the sort of thing you'll just forget about while you're playing. Yeah, everything's come in.
Mhm.
You know, carry
Don't
on
have
with
to
the
worry
game
about it.
plan. Don't have to worry about it, and then you'll kill that guy and go.
Yeah, like he's just so good. I can't overstate how
So
strong.
strong.
Ability
And he's
is.
a beast. He's an absolute beast. Of all the things you do not want dropping into your back line halfway through a game of 40k,
Yeah.
it's an Angron. Yeah.
And it ties in so well. Like even the fact that he comes back to life even synergizes with our secondaries. Like the main one being Blood God's Due. So this is a secondary where if stuff dies on objectives, you get points. And obviously, because Angron can die multiple times in a single game, just one unit might score you 2 or 3 points on Blood God's Due, which doesn't sound crazy. You know, it's just 2 or 3 victory points, but games have been won or lost by 2 or 3 victory
and they
points.
do rack up surprisingly quickly when you've got 2 or 3 here, another couple there, and before you know it, I mean, I've never seen you struggle to max that out at all.
Blood God's Due is a pretty easy 10 or 12 points. Like most games, you should be able to get it. And with Angron dying multiple times, it pushes it up just a little bit more towards that 15.
Again, helps with that consistency of scoring.
Yeah.
You know, that seems to be what's making the difference here. He is helping with that consistency, with the reroll ones, with the ability to score those extra points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all sounds good.
Yeah,
so
it's just incredible. Sorry,
yeah. No. So I was just going to move on to your list because I know you've got a tournament coming up, and you're taking the big angry boy.
I am. Yeah.
So I think we just run through your list and let us all know how it works.
Yeah.
And
so, following in a similar vein to my original list, and like I said before, you do need first of all to have a Lord on Juggernaut, and I still keep Lord Invocatus because he's still really good, and I have the spare points for it. He gives you a bit of ignore invuns, you know. So him and Angron are my 2 characters in the list. There's no other characters. That's pretty much, at least in my case, I've found is all I need. Like, Invocatus gives you the bonus movement, and Angron just runs around being a big, scary, red, horrible monster thing. The main things that I dropped from my list to include Angron are I dropped a couple of units of Berserkers, and I did drop the Terax drill. So my troops now, I've got 3 units of 5 Berserkers, with the eviscerators and icons, the usual
Mhm.
upgrades. And I've also gone for 10 Jackals now, because it's something I have noticed in my list where I don't really want to dedicate 5 Berserkers to my home objective.
Yeah, it's a bit
Where,
much. And then
yeah,
when you're down to 3 or 4, that's definitely, you haven't got spares for that.
exactly. And I've seen plenty of players, myself included, where there are a lot of games where, hey, it's fine, you can just put a Chaos Spawn on your home objective, and then you're not worrying about it too much. You know, it's just, he's a 25-point model, he's holding my back objective, it's fine. But if you're playing missions like Data Scry Salvage, where you need to do an action on your home objective, and
Mhm.
spawns can't do actions,
Yeah.
or the enemy has a lot of deep strikes, and one spawn is not going to zone out your back corner.
Also, with the apparent rise in the use of Desolator squads,
Yeah.
a spawn is probably not going to be the way to go anymore.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Desolators, I feel, might not be too great into the spawn because it's T5.
True.
It's
True.
T5, so they'll be hitting on 4s, but they'll be re-rolling. But at least the cultists, because they're 10 wounds rather than 4, it's probably going to be much more likely that you survive. Sorry, not cultists, jackals. They are
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a safer bet. I think unless
agree.
they're prepared to dedicate a lot, they'll kill 6 or 7 maybe.
Yeah.
I think getting 4 wounds through on a spawn. 4 wounds it is, isn't it?
Yes, 4 wounds, yeah.
I think they'll manage that.
Yeah, they probably will. And Jackals, don't get me wrong, I do think, I don't want to say they're overcosted, but 7 points each for a toughness 3, 6-up save model, which is fine, you know. But then you look at their damage output and you think, hey, that's not too bad. But then you realize they're not core, so they can't fight on death or anything like that. I wouldn't suggest using them for anything more than just an objective holder. Don't expect miracles out of them, you know. They're not going to run into Mortarion and just delete him. With
No, of course, no.
Not gonna happen.
But just think of them as being cheaper than Berserkers.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
They're cheaper than Berserkers, they hold the objective, job's a good one. So we've gone to elites. I've got 2 units of 5, 8 bound. This has pretty much been a staple in all my lists. Like, having more units of 8 bound would be great, but I simply don't have the points for it. So I stick with 2 units of 5. I find
Never have too many 8 bound.
Exactly. But I find 2 units of 5 is enough. Like, they hit so hard in combat that the lists that I've been using don't really need more than that.
Yeah.
I then got a unit of 3 exalted 8 bound. Same thing again. I've always ran just the 1 unit. And this is a really good unit, and I wish I could take more, but there's a couple of different things that I think are more important in the list, you know. So it'd be nice to take more, but I'm sticking with just the 1 unit for now.
Yeah.
They give me a bit of anti-tank, another aura of denying fullback potentially, and yeah, they're just really good.
Yeah, they slot him well. Yeah.
Then go to my fast attack, which is my compulsory slot in the Arcs of Omen detachment. I've got 3 Chaos Spawn, and pretty much
the trusty spawn.
Every World Eaters list you see is going to have these 3 Chaos Spawn. They give you Blood Tithe. They're early game objective contesters. They screen out really well, like your front line from any deep strikers. They're just really good.
They're brilliant, actually, aren't they? I mean, it seems silly to sit here and just be bigging up such a little guy, basically, but they are brilliant. There
are times where once you get the +1 to hit, Blood Tithe, and stuff like that, and you think, hold on, these guys actually hit pretty hard in combat. Like, I've had games where, in fact, when I played against Steven, and I was Steven Box at the ITT, and in the game he had some Chaos Spawn because he was also playing World Eaters, and he was looking at it, and I was like, yeah, you got +1 to hit, and he was like, yeah, these guys hit pretty hard. Like, why are they 25 points each?
Yeah,
and
25 points. 25 points. They're outstanding, really.
They get 2d3 +1 attacks, strength 6 -2, flat 2 damage. Like,
cheap objective holders, free Blood Tithe.
Yeah, that's the main thing. You get your Blood Tithe, and and they die on objectives for Blood God's Due. It's what we like. More points.
Yeah.
And for my 4 fast attack, because this is my compulsory slot, I have a Dreadclaw drop pod. And this is one of the more important units in the army, especially now that I don't have Invocatus. I touched on it a bit earlier, but obviously we all know how strong Invocatus is because he gives you that early game presence. Lets you move up those 8 bound with the pre-game move. But at least if you have the drop pod, you still kind of have it.
Yeah, you've
Like,
still got the presence.
you're probably going to put Berserkers inside. You can put 8-bound inside, but I don't rate it. I don't think it's worth it. Because Berserkers at least can do the 3d6 charge. They have a 1 CP strat, so they charge on 3d6 drop the lowest. Which
So the 8-bound can't do that.
yes, exactly. 8-bound cannot
Then
do
yeah,
that.
it makes total sense then, because if you don't make that charge,
Like,
you've just hung one of your most valuable units out.
Exactly. If you had +1 to charge from the Blood Tithe, then there's more of an argument for it. But
Yeah.
Berserkers all the way, in my opinion.
Yeah. That 3d6 is big.
Yeah. It's also it gives you that early game presence. It means you can lock the enemy in their deployment zone just a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And it's a transport as well. So what I like to do is I bring in the Dreadclaw drop pod, disembark 5 Berserkers, and keep 5 more inside. Because it's different than a normal drop pod. You don't have to disembark everything.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, he's next to an objective as well. The enemy will probably shoot the Dreadclaw drop pod, destroy it, and then you have now 5 OBSEC bodies disembarking from that transport that can get on an objective.
Yeah.
If you've positioned it well, they can be out of line of sight, or the enemy's already wasted their shooting, so they can't really afford to shoot that other unit that's just disembarked.
Well, yeah, or there's not enough left to deal with it anyway. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Or a big scary demon Primarch is also out in the open that really needs to be dealt with.
Yeah. And they're not worried about the 3 Berserkers who are left. Yeah,
Exactly.
They've got bigger things to worry about.
That can mean in turn 2 you're scoring 12 primary when you should have only scored 4.
Yeah.
Because you managed to lock the enemy in their deployment zone with just 1 unit of Berserkers, and then your Dreadclaw drop pod has secured you a midfield objective that you normally wouldn't have.
Yeah. Meanwhile, all your big scary stuff is moving up the board behind you.
Exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
ready to dive on turn 2.
Yeah, love the Dreadclaw drop pod. I really think he fills in the weakness that the army has from not taking Invocatus by giving you just a little bit of early game presence.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. And you always like the drill as well, just for that kind of ability to pop up. So
that's like I mentioned earlier, that's one of the things I did drop. I did really like the drill, but I just found it a little bit too expensive for what it did.
Mm-hmm.
It had great durability and damage output, but then I kind of looked at it and I thought it's 180 points. If I drop it, I'm already halfway to Angron.
Yeah.
And I really
I'm sure that was the first thing to go then.
It was the first thing.
Out of everything in your list, I can see that being the thing that probably went first.
Yeah, definitely. When you think that as well, you think with the drill, but now I'm losing out on deep strike support, you know? Angron is your deep strike support. He just has to die first.
Yeah, exactly. And you've almost doubled up on it with the Dreadclaw drop pod as well. You know, I know that's coming in early, but you've still got that drop. You have to bring it in early.
Yeah, no, totally.
You don't want to. So it again gives you more options.
Yeah. And then we got the last thing in the list, which I've seen some other World Eaters lists do, and I personally would not leave home without these guys. I think they're one of the most, if not the most important part of the list. And that's I take an allied detachment, a super heavy auxiliary of 2 Chaos Knight War Dog Brigands, the ones that have all the shooting.
Yeah. We talked about this. I mean, between us, and I think we were a little bit skeptical in a way. Like, to me, it was a bit odd. Like, if you're going that way, but I've now seen them in action, and they're absolutely worth taking.
Yeah. So they have to be Dreadblades when you take them as allies. And I give them the Dreadblade option, which means when they target a vehicle, character, or monster, they get +1 to hit, which, won't say no to. And it really ties in well with in this case, 2 weaknesses that the World Eaters army has as a whole. And that is the ability to deal with transports and the ability to deal with screens.
Yeah.
Like, if you've gone pure World Eaters and you're going full melee, you will kill those things, but you're not maximizing your efficiency. You're not getting past those screens to charge the good stuff, or you're not charging the guys inside the transport, which is what the transport is protecting. It's why it's there.
Yeah.
And
this gives you that chance to pop the transport so that then your 8-bound are charging into the juicy goodness inside. Yeah.
Exactly. And when your War Dog Brigands, they've got the Melter that's suddenly hitting on 2s if it's shooting at transports. You've got the Gatling, which can deal with chaff, and they're just perfect for the role that they fill. And it also means, because not all your damage output is just in the fight phase, you're spreading out your Blood Tithe gain.
Yes.
So we'll cut that out. And it really means you're spreading out your blood tithe gain. So your blood tithe, you get a bonus if you kill vehicles, characters, or monsters. You get an extra point. And when you're managing to kill stuff in the shooting phase as well as the fight phase, it might mean the difference between your first charge phase, you've got +1 to charge, or you don't, if you've managed to kill some stuff in the shooting.
Yeah.
In fact, it came up, I think it came up in a game against you. You had your mech guns with your orcs. And I managed to get an angle, destroy one of the mech guns, think maybe killed some grots.
You've probably killed all 3 mech guns.
Right.
That's usually the way it goes. But you did. It got you that early points on the board that you can then spend.
And that means, as a World Eaters player, if I went full World Eaters, I have 4 blood tithe points that I wouldn't have had if I went pure World Eaters without the Knights. Yeah. And that's the difference between having +1 to charge in your first turn and not. Yeah. Which is a pretty big deal. You want that +1 to charge.
That could be game breaking at the end of the day. That could be the difference. Certainly could be the difference between winning and losing a game.
Especially when Angron, when he dies and comes back, has to arrive 9 inches away. You really, really need that +1 to charge, because if he fails that charge out of Deep Strike, he's going to die again. And then you're just going to have to wait until next turn, spend 6 more blood tithe, and just try it again. If you have that +1 to charge,
do it again. Oh, never mind.
Just do it again.
Just do it again next time.
Yeah.
Oh, well. Yeah. Never mind.
He's great. Yeah, so that's the list in whole. I think so. I've only tried one proper game with it, but I am taking it to a tournament this weekend to give it a proper go, see how it performs. But I have really high hopes. I'm really excited to try it out. I think the army works really well together.
And in terms of matchups, what are you looking at on paper and thinking, that's a good matchup for me? That's something I'd rather avoid.
Yeah. So we'll start with the good matchups, like the matchups that I want to see. So we discussed in our very first episode, it was myself and Joe, the one game that I'd lost when I went to the ITT, and that was against Knights. And without Angron, Knights were one of my scariest matchups. As much damage as World Eaters do, they don't have a lot of strength 8 and above outside of Exalted 8 bound. But that's where suddenly Angron just totally flips that matchup from being terrifying to like, you're the danger now. You know?
Yeah. Those strength 9.
Wow.
Coming in, yeah.
Yeah, so he's strength 10 with the sweep, strength 15 with the smash.
Yeah.
And like, the main thing with Knights is they cannot screen him. Like, when he's deep striking back in, he's just going to absolutely annihilate whatever he charges. And so when he just keeps coming back, he's so powerful into the Knight matchup. And he, as I said before, he totally flips that matchup, turns it from a terrifying one to a really, really good one for us.
Yeah.
Other good ones, I mean, any army that has like a low model count where Angron can just kind of go in and just pick up units left, right, and center.
Relatively unscreened. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyone who's going to struggle to screen him out is going to be a problem.
Exactly. Other good matchups include gunline armies, because obviously he has the ability to deny fallback.
Yeah.
And mainly talking about Guard here and Tau.
Mm-hmm.
Guard to a lesser extent, because they have the ability to shoot into combat. They have a stratagem. I'm sorry. My throat is so tickly. Sorry. Guard have the ability to shoot into combat for a stratagem. It means if you're in combat with one of their infantry or platoon units, I think it is.
Yeah.
Their tanks can shoot into combat, which could mean the difference between a living and a dead Angron. And it means his no fallback ability isn't as strong. But when you're into the town matchup, it is game changing. Yeah. So contrary to popular belief, you really want to face those gunline armies when you're using Angron. I mean, yeah, he's really good into those kind of armies. Harlequins as well, I think, really struggle to deal with Angron. Because don't get me wrong, they have the transports and everything like that, but they don't quite have the damage output to deal with Angron in a single turn, unless they dedicate like absolutely everything in their army to him.
Which in a way you don't mind.
Yeah, because he's just coming back. You know?
Yeah.
In my eyes, they've just wasted their whole turn of shooting and combat.
Yeah.
And then it means all your berserkers are running around, grabbing objectives, fighting on death.
Everything else is left untouched, doing what it wants. If they've got to do that, that's a problem.
Yeah,
that's a problem.
So on the whole, Knights, low model cat armies such as like Custodes. You got the gunliner armies and Harlequins. I think those are the best matchups for World Eaters with Angron.
Yeah.
But then we want to talk about our bad matchups, which
Yeah. What do you not want to see?
Yeah. The funniest part is other World Eaters. If you're
Yeah.
using Angron, you
Yeah.
don't want to face other World Eaters, especially ones that don't have Angron.
Mhm.
Which sounds really weird because, as great as Angron is, he can't fight on death, which he shouldn't be able to. If he fought on death, he'd be outrageous.
Yeah.
And when you come up against other World Eaters armies that have a lot more fight on death than you do, like, say, the points that would be spent on Angron instead going to 8-bound,
Yeah.
Angron suddenly becomes a lot less efficient, because if he's dying in your own turn, that's devastating. Like, that just can't happen.
Yeah.
It means he's having to wait a full battle round instead of just half a battle round to come back. And
Yeah,
other
it just
World
totally
Eaters
throws
lists,
the mechanic out.
exactly. Other World Eaters lists is something that really terrifies Angron.
Yeah, and you'll see a few of those around at the moment as well. So there's a good chance once you get near those top tables, you are going to cross paths with another World Eaters list.
Yeah, absolutely. Dark Angels as well is another boogeyman. It's worth noting that obviously these guys are the boogeyman of the meta right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, apart from the fact that they're Dark Angels, why specifically them over? I mean, I know they're just tough as hell, but surely, I mean, he's great. Surely he's great for that, right?
So this is the thing. It's like, when it comes to their Terminators, this is the stuff that he struggles into. When it comes to the Terminators, it's kind of in a similar vein to the World Eaters matchup being bad, in that you're losing Angron in your own turn. So World Eaters damage output, Angron goes into, say, 10 Deathwing Terminators, probably kills 4 or 5 of them. Angron is then probably going to die on the clapback from those 5 other Terminators, because they've all got Thunder Hammers and Storm Shields, let's be real.
Yeah.
And then you're losing Angron in your own turn, and
Again.
that's really, really bad.
Yeah.
Especially because you're going to be charging them, so they're going to have +1 to hit because they're Dark Angels.
Yeah.
And because of their transhuman as well, it's so swingy whether Angron can actually even kill 4 or 5.
Yeah.
You could just roll terribly and go, oh, I only killed 2.
Yeah.
Sucks to
And
be
you
me,
certainly
I guess.
can't reliably run into a unit and just guarantee you're going to wipe it.
Yeah,
which is what you need to do. They're just too tough.
Yeah, they're such a brick that dealing with them is so incredibly tough as World Eaters, especially with Angron. You would think he'd do great, but it's just so swingy, you know?
Yeah, so again, and unfortunately, Dark Angels and World Eaters are matches you are going to be coming up against at most tournaments at the moment.
Yeah. It is worth noting, though, that there is like a bright side to it. The other kind of Dark Angels list, the Raven Wing aspect, is something you do want to face as Angron, because their damage output is mostly shooting.
Okay.
With the land speeders and the bikes and everything like that. So if you can stop things falling back, that's
when you're back to that
really
full back. Yes. Yeah. So you're back where you were.
But then the most important part, this is the worst thing that Angron can see, the worst matchup he could ever have. That's bad terrain. Which sounds silly, you know, like everyone knows how important terrain is, but with Angron, it's so especially important. Where, don't get me wrong, you don't care if Angron dies. Like, his job really is to die. But the most important thing with Angron is, can you hide him turn 1?
Yes.
It doesn't matter if he can't charge anything in that turn 1. It's just, can you keep him hidden? That's all that matters. If you can keep him hidden for the first turn of the game, you're laughing.
Yeah.
Then it means if you're going second, the enemy is forced to come towards you, and you could potentially get a first turn charge.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're going first, you can advance the rest of your army out, get your Dreadclaw drop pod down, and get your Dreadclaw drop pod down, give them something that's, you know, a bit more scary than Angron, who's just moved up the field.
Yeah.
So it's just so important to hide him turn 1 in case you don't get that first turn.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense.
Obviously, because he doesn't get obscuring, he does really benefit from a board that has one of those massive L blockers.
You need a UK TC big L.
UKTC is a very good example of it. They have a massive L. Typically, that's right back in your deployment zone near the home objective. that is, I believe, 8 inches long, 8 inches wide, and 8 inches high. So it's a big, sizable piece.
Yeah.
And it's got no windows, no doors. You cannot see through it. It's totally opaque. And Angron easily hides behind it, and it's so strong for him to be able to hide there in the first turn.
Yeah. And with,
he
with all those wounds,
he doesn't
have
need.
to.
He doesn't need to do anything in the first turn. He doesn't even need to do anything in the second turn. As long as you can hide him and make the opponent worried about leaving their deployment zone because of his movement stat being 16 inches, he's already doing his job. You know?
Yeah. And then chances are by turn 2 that they've got to come out. They've got to deal with those Berserkers. They've got to deal with the Dreadclaw drop pod. They probably moved out. And with a 16-inch move, there's a good chance by turn 2 you're going to have a charge onto something anyway. Certainly by turn 3, you know, if you haven't got something to charge at that point, then they haven't left their back objective yet. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's really good. Really good.
Yeah.
Well, we'll wish you luck for your tournament. Hope it all goes well. We'll have to get you back on to let you give us a rundown of how Angron fared.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm more than happy to talk about Angron.
So in the meantime, chuck us a like, chuck us a subscribe. One more thing, we have our Spring GT 5 games, 2 days in Hertfordshire. We'll chuck a link to the event below. There's still tickets available. Check us out, come down, chat some tactics, play some games, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you next time, guys. Thanks for listening.
Take care. Bye-bye.